Hello, and welcome to my channel, Reading Little Blue Books Out Loud. This is a Little Blue Book. It happens to be Little Blue Book number 846, and it is titled Womanhood, The Facts of Life Revealed to Women, written by Gloria Goddard. And it was written sometime in the 1920s. So we left off somewhere, quarter of the way down page 31, and here we go. Oh, excuse me. Oh, one more. All right, I think we got rid of that. Here we go. Courtship. The average person believes that courtship ends with when the minister brushes the bride's cheek with his ecclesiastical lips. And this belief is the rock on which marriage founders. The girl, once married, is convinced that her life work has been accomplished, so she ceases to consider her new husband. How many young girls are there who would come down to entertain her beau for the evening with frowsy hair and in an untidy house dress? Not one. When a young man is coming to call, the girl primps and dresses in her most becoming frocks. She fixes her hair smartly, powders, and looks as alluring as possible when she opens the door for him. 1 year after they are married, the man comes in after a weary day's work and finds a dowdy woman with wisps of hair streaking an unpowdered face, through which a shiny nose gleams like a beacon light. When the beau comes wooing, the young girl sees that the living room is neat and dusted. When the young husband returns in the evening, papers may be lying about everywhere, the furniture undusted, and a general air of unkeptness may prevail. We do not say this is universally true. Fortunately, it is not. But it has a wide enough prevalence to be worthy of discussion. These same women complain bitterly that their husbands come home and bury themselves in the paper, or do not come home at all, or pay more heed to their business than to their wives. True. And can you blame them? Far better to fasten their eyes upon neat black print than upon a frowsy woman. It is this sort of carelessness that sends men to billiard parlors, to poker games, and to other women. Of course, there rises the cry of the old justification. Before marriage, the woman had no house, nor children to keep her busy all day. Cannot a woman keep her house and herself clean and attractive at the same time? A large number of women do it, so all could. It is hard to understand the psychology that is deep-rooted in many women and that allows them to be slovenly. No one expects a woman, if she must do her own work, to be attired in a party frock when her husband comes home in the evening, but she can wear a simple, pretty house dress with a gay, this is cretonne, cretonne, cretonne apron over it. She can have her hair nicely arranged and her face powdered. If a woman must do her own work, she should live in a home small enough for her to take care of, and still allow her time for herself. She should not have so many small babies that every minute is occupied with them. She should learn all of the simple labor-saving devices that make housework easier. The home is the last place to be standardized. It is no wonder that men become impatient with women and conclude that they are shiftless and brainless. If the same tactics were applied to businesses, universal bankruptcy would result. Housework can be standardized and should be. Once that women realize this, their labor will be cut in half. The only way to make marriage a continual happiness is to continue this courtship through life. Each party must make the effort to keep the desire of the other alive and eager. Husband and wife must regard each other as they did before marriage. This will not be hard if there was true love to start with, and it will be infinitely worthwhile. Marriage is not a thing to be lightly entered into and lightly cast aside. It requires constant care on the part of each. To be sure, if after these attempts to preserve the love of the pre-marriage days, the love dies, it is better for the temper, health, and morality of both parties to separate. But all other methods should be adequately tried first. Chapter 4. The Proper Mate. The purpose of marriage, the essential thing to found a happy marriage upon, is choice of a proper mate. Marriage, even from the most modern standpoint, is something more than the satisfaction of the love desire. It is an institution upon which all of our social life is founded. More than that, it is the one undisputed method of gainly immortality. Men and women live on in their children, their grandchildren, forever. Their perpetuity that they hand down must be the finest that they are capable of. If two incompatible people marry and live together, they give that incompatibility of temperament to all posterity. They bequeath dissatisfaction, unrest, misery to the world, for it is an undisputed fact that the children of unhappy couples are rarely rounded persons. So it is no light matter to choose a fitting mate. The perpetuation of the race is one of the deep fundamental principles of marriage. It remains for each couple to see that their offering to this end is the best that they could possibly make. From the standpoint of the race, it is essential that only those who are fit should mate and give children to the future. The majority of matings are haphazard. A young woman chooses a husband from among the men with whom she is thrown in contact. She cannot wait until she has seen and known all the available men. Too often she takes to the first one who pleases her. The economic independence of women will alleviate this slightly. A young woman no longer needs to marry in her earliest 20s. She can afford to wait. This gives her a better chance of selection. But even with necessity for marrying early removed, she knows little or nothing about the man she chooses. He is attentive, dances well, is amazing, so she marries him. She does not stop to consider his physical fitness to be the father of her children. Mere passion too often determines the matter. This is a thing that comes very easily, and on the crest of its urge, people marry. As easily it goes when there is no fundamental compatibility behind it. Then marriage is wrecked. A young woman should not marry hastily, nor choose as a basis of this estate the monetary thrill of a kiss, nor the charm of a man's dancing ability. We are not suggesting long, tedious engagements, but as deep a knowledge of the man as is possible before the girl enters into matrimony with him. Eugenics. The girl is confronted with a problem. What is the fitting mate? Her own inclinations should be the first guide, but when they have singled out a possible choice, she should bring common sense to their aid. In general, all persons turn to their opposites. This is right. Opposites in appearance and temperament are usually the most congenial. This does not mean violent contrasts. A man who cares nothing for the theater, dancing, social life should not pick a girl whose whole life is bound up in these. If a woman feels immense or insistent love for a man whom she knows is not a fit father for her children, she should either forget the desired mating or the children. Eugenics, or the choice of proper mates, is being more carefully studied from a scientific point of view, and will ultimately be invaluable, at least as far as procreation goes. Eugenics is a science of improving the stock, of making the offspring as nearly perfect as possible. It has been practiced in the breeding of animals for a long time. Every farmer knows the value of having the best cattle he can obtain and having them, of mating his cows with thoroughbred bulls. Yet people still shudder at the thought of applying the principles to the human race. Its formulator, Francis Galton, defines it as the science which deals with all influences that improve the inborn qualities of a race. He further explained this idea and expanded it, saying that the aim of eugenics is to check the birth rate of the unit instead of allowing them to come into being. Though doomed in large numbers to perish prematurely, the second object is the improvement of the race by furthering productivity of the fit, by early marriages and healthful rearing of their children. There is much to be said for and against the wholesome acceptance of this theory. In essence, it imperils the personal selection for marriage, and comes very close to being an officious attempt to interfere with human freedom. Yet, it is gaining ground in the world's legislation. To the individual, it may seem to impose unnecessary hardships and restrictions, but that is not its aim. Extreme advocates of eugenics say flatly that we should rather bring the propagation of the race to the level of the stud farm than that it should go on in the old haphazard way in which surely leads to catastrophe. While we do not want science for domestic animals and chance for men, the average thinking person will reject this stringent proposal, but some middle course lies open. Legislation prohibiting certain matings would be obnoxious, but certain laws making health attractive would meet with approval. There are extreme cases where laws should act, not to prohibit mating, but childbearing. If the state should believe that certain persons were absolutely unfit for parenting children, it is possible, by a simple operation, to insure them against this, without detriment to the health of either sex. There are times when this is highly desirable. Switzerland, in 10 years, largely abolished a certain type of feeble-mindedness by this method. If science believes that such traits as feeble-mindedness, insanity, epilepsy, dysomnia, and syphilis are inheritable in such proportions that prohibition of offspring should be required, such a law should be resorted to. But since such laws are not at present prevalent, it remains for each man and woman to choose wisely and healthily. If a young woman is certain that she cannot be happy without mating with a man who is consumptive, paralytic, or inflicted with some other inheritable disease, she should enter upon the marriage with a firm will against giving birth to any children. This may seem a very harsh stricture, but if the young woman will stop to realize that having children by such an unfit father may carry on the disease in a worse form through her children or grandchildren, she will grant the wisdom of the plan. No woman wants deformed or unhealthy children. If she marries a man in such a condition, she does it open-eyed. But to go through the trials of childbirth for the sake of a life that will be marred by illness is another matter. It is not only unfair to the parents, but brutally unfair to the child. If people would get over the idea that children owe all to their parents and come to realize how much parents owe to their children, they would see the sense of such reasoning. After all, it is a great responsibility to bring a life into the world. Remember that the person for whose life you are responsible had no choice in the matter. You bring them here. It is up to you to see that they arrive in a not too happy world, equipped with every possible weapon to gain happiness. The children of unhealthy parents are unfairly handicapped from the start. The future of eugenics. Certain scientists do not regard eugenics as simply as we have done. Bertrand Russell, in Icarus, is sure that eugenics will become universal. This power will be used at first to diminish inceptibility, a most desirable object, but probably, in time, opposition to the government will be taken to prove imbecility, so that rebels of all kinds will be sterilized. Epileptics, consumptives, dysomelics, and so on will gradually be included. In the end, there will be a tendency to include all who fail to pass the usual school examinations. He believes that the result will increase the average intelligence and decrease brilliance. Viscount Haldane, considered by some as a greater scientist and a more brilliant critic, indicates that eugenics may come in by a pleasanter though more startling route. By 1950, he anticipates the production of the first etogenetic child, or child born from a womb withdrawn from the mother's body for all of the embryonic period. By a simple operation, he prophesies that science will be able to remove an ovary from a woman and keep it growing in a suitable fluid for as long as 20 years, producing a fresh ovum each month, of which 90% can be fertilized. The embryos grown successfully for 9 months and then brought out into the air. Many nations will hail this movement because of the falling birth rate that they are at present suffering from. He believes that such an absolute separation of reproduction from love will make a deep and profound effect upon morality. It will be possible, then, for each generation to choose only the perfect parents to produce the coming generation. There is such to be said in favor of this amazing idea, and of course, a great deal to be said against it. But the ever-increasing growth of intelligence will ultimately wipe out the majority of the objections. The foremost thinkers of today regard eugenics as a matter worthy of their discussion and serious consideration. We offer what science may suggest as possible solutions of the race problem, how the state and country may regard their discoveries in another and quite unpredictable manner. It is very probable that things will not advance as briskly as these two quoted scientists anticipate, nor need we be too much concerned with the fate of 1950. It remains for each individual to give his and her consent to adequate eugenic protection. Greater happiness will result from a certainty that the parties to any marriage are fit for parenthood. And that will conclude the end of this chapter, and I'll see you in the next. Thanks for listening.